What's up, everyone? Welcome back once again, and a happy Thanksgiving to all of our listeners out there. Not sure exactly who listens to it live or later in the week, so we're going to cover all of our bases here and wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving right out of the gates here. Yes, believe it or not, we have arrived at week 12 of the season, and the holidays are already upon us here. With just a few chances left to clinch a playoff spot in fantasy, things are becoming urgent for most owners out there unless you've already got something locked up. We will lay everything out there for you this week and hopefully set you up for success this week and moving forward with some of our advice here. 3 games are going to kick off on Thursday. So we're locked and loaded to get you ready right away here on Tuesday night for this week. Most other shows, they drag their feet. They wait till later in the week. We're here right now to get you ready for these Thursday games. So with all this in mind, I got to ask the question, how much time on Thanksgiving do you guys actually get to make specifically for football? Like, is the day catered around it, or do you have to kind of like be flexible to, what's going on?
Well, I'll say this. There's 3 games on, and each game is about 3 hours long, so it's 9 hours.
You're bringing your A game already tonight.
Man, math right on.
Is that all you're going to say? It's the end of that story?
Yeah, 9 hours. That's what I devote to football on Thanksgiving Day. 9 hours.
I was told
Yeah.
to do math.
I thought that was self-explanatory.
Yeah, I'm able to kind of lock in. We eat dinner usually like second half of the Lions game, but my family kind of all knows what's up. We watch football.
Leave me alone.
No, they're watching with me. It's not like me and everybody else is miserable. We're into it. It's what we do.
My family, my side of the family, we actually eat our holiday meals at lunchtime, which a lot of people hate. I love it because 1:00, I'm done. Watch football all day. It's like it's just football day then. And obviously my family knows I love it, so they're good with it, or at least suffer through. So that's all I ask.
Plus, dinner is then like leftover Thanksgiving sandwich.
Exactly. Like I don't have to wait till the next day once it's already been refrigerated overnight.
No.
Like it's still good from just a couple hours ago.
Yeah, we're kind of similar with that. It's that 1:00, 1:30 time. So I do miss basically almost all of the Lions game when you count in the whole family pictures and all the other stuff leading up to dinner. So we'll always catch that second game with the team who shall not be mentioned. It's always good for a good nap too during that game, if you need to nod off for a couple minutes. So, and then usually like everybody gets into like their second wind later in the evening and they'll all, want to play games and stuff. And I'll slip away to the couch and watch the later game. So, we do get quite a bit of football in. It's just funny because so many people cater the entire day to the games. And then there's this whole like subculture where it's like, there's football on today, which is hard to imagine for me. So I just thought I'd bring it up.
Listen, I know this might be weird, but I do some weird things, I know, but I love the board game with the football in the background. I love it.
Yeah, that's a good time.
I'm in on that.
Yep.
Depends on what it is.
Not Monopoly.
Yeah, I'm not playing Monopoly.
I don't want the game to suck even if there's not football on. So
how do you feel about a 36-person card game where you never know whose turn it is?
Yeah, I like just watching football.
I'm going to say this at the risk of getting killed, South. I think you do a lot of stuff with your family that you shouldn't be doing. Like with whether or not football is on or not, I wouldn't be playing a 36-person card game where you don't know whose turn it is.
I tend to not to, but we're definitely a game playing family, so there's a lot of games.
I like
so. All right, let's talk about some fantasy football here. Very limited supply of names here as far as the waivers go because bye weeks are gone. They're done. We've only really got injuries left to deal with, unless you're Zeke and you're an idiot. Your roster should be in a pretty decent place at this point. In the event, though, that you need a player, you got an injury or something like that, let's look at a couple of the most added players this week. As I said, we're only going to highlight a couple because I think if you're getting too much deeper than this, you might as well just take the week off. All right, number one, Samaje Perine. We brought him up last week. Somehow, he's still available in a large majority of fantasy football leagues. Basically, at this point, like he's the guy for the Redskins. They just signed a guy off their practice squad last week to be his backup, and they're going to sign a guy off somebody else's practice squad this week, probably to be their number 3. So it's going to be Perine or bust for them at the position. So how do we feel about him?
I'm going to go a little contrarian here for you. I like Perine. My worry with him is that he's had ball security issues, and I think that may cause them to go away from him. I kind of like Byron Marshall. That might be stupid, but he's going to fully play that Chris Thompson role. He's not the player Chris Thompson is, but he's going to play that role. He obviously does have some explosiveness. We all remember watching him at Oregon. He looked good for Philadelphia in preseasons, never was enough to make that team. But I don't know. I just think the way Washington plays, game scripts can get away a little bit. They can certainly get a little pass heavy, and that's going to be Byron Marshall. They're not going to keep Perine in there when they're behind or when they get pass crazy. So I don't know. I mean, if they play it like they did last week, he obviously had a great game against the Saints. Well, great, maybe giving him a little too much credit, but he played well.
Yeah.
But I kind of like Marshall at least as much if obviously I play in a PPR.
This feels like one of these backfields where you have no idea what to trust from week to week.
They're getting pretty popular, aren't they?
Yeah, it just feels like Jay Gruden is one of those like dead set in stone guys. Like, I'm going to play whoever is the hot hand this drive. And even if he's the hot hand this drive, I still might try something different the next drive because that's what I do. So I don't know. I see his name popping up everywhere, all over these waiver columns and the percentage of ads this week. I think that he should be owned, obviously, but the people that are going to count on him, I think you could be setting yourself up for, some disappointment, because I think you hit the nail on the head. It's still going to be a revolving door in that backfield for the Redskins. All right, let's talk about, unless you got something on him.
I actually love Samaje Perine. You said you were going to play contrarian. I think I'm being the contrarian. I love him. And, I was mad at myself because I was going to start him over Leo, and then I talked myself out of it because that's the smart move. And then I ended up winning anyway, so that's really what matters. But in my other league, I actually won because of Perine. It was a close game, and I won because I played him over the guys on my bench. Now, my bench wasn't great, and I had some buys, but had I not played him, I would have lost. But, yeah, I think going forward, we say it a lot, but I think you could do a lot worse than a guy that really – you say you like Byron Marshall. We'll see. I mean, the dude's basically had 2 yards ever. So, I don't know how much we can lean on him. I just don't think there's anything behind him. And I think that it says something for him. I'm going to talk a little bit more about him. I know I did a little bit here, but I think it says a lot about him that the Redskins aren't going out of their way to add anybody right now. I think they trust him. So I like that.
I think at this point, it's kind of like in real life football. It's kind of like fantasy football. Like, what else are your other options out there? You know what I mean?
Somebody.
Like, yeah, you say that, but
I mean, like a warm body basically. Now they have Byron Marshall, and then
listen, I love Perine. I thought that Perine was going to be like one of the steals of this draft class. I think he was so underrated coming out of college because all the talk was about Joe Mixon. But Perine did great in college in that Oklahoma offense, and I think he can be good. I mean, but there is definitely something to say that the fact of like he couldn't beat out Rob Kelly early on in the year. Now he's got the job because Kelly's hurt, but they still use Thompson a lot. They're still going to use Marshall. I would say I'll agree with Miles a lot in that Thompson role because Perine's not that guy. Right. So like you're going to get 15 carries out of him because that's what he is, and the rest of it is going to fall on somebody else. It's great if you get the touch. It's great if you get the touchdowns, but it's a crap. You're almost counting on him to be touchdown dependent.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned how you had that tough roster decision. I mean, you were to listen to me and not played Dak.
Still won, buddy.
You wouldn't have had such a tough time. So
still won.
I had to get that dig in. So I'm good for the show now. So
jerk. Yeah. Why don't you just go ahead off then?
Maybe I will. But let's talk about Devontae Booker first. Running back for the Broncos here. He's been seeing the most of the snaps over the past couple weeks. He seems to be kind of the lead dog in that backfield right now. I don't know how much that's really saying. The situation isn't great, obviously. They're going to start Paxton Lynch this week, but that could mean some more volume for him catching the ball, where he's been predominantly the most active back on the team there. So what do things look like for Devontae Booker coming up this week?
I know that I'm gonna catch crap from at least one person in this group. Does he still play for the Broncos? Because they're not good at football. Like, I just can't deal with it. I just can't. Like, I'm out on the Broncos because they don't have a quarterback and they're extremely predictable. Like, this is what I was afraid of all year long with Demaryius or with Emmanuel Sanders, because there's no doubting the talent level of those players. But they still don't have a quarterback, which makes them extremely one-dimensional, which makes it very easy to play defense against them.
Yeah, I get that, but I guess probably the biggest appeal here is, especially in a point per reception kind of format, like this is a guy who might go from, last week he had, I don't even remember, 5 catches I think he had out of the backfield, 6 targets. So that might double, because now you have a quarterback coming in who, he's not a world beater by any means. So there's going to be a lot of checking down, a lot of shorter passing games. So I think it benefits him in that regard. And for, kind of a fantasy football culture who embraces guys like Danny Woodhead and Christian McCaffrey, like, I don't understand how we could overlook Booker in that same vein, at least, when the opportunities are going to start to pile up there, in my opinion.
You were talking about Miles, right?
Who, me?
The people that love Danny Woodhead. Okay, then, yeah, I can't imagine we have a lot more to say about Booker. But then I guess I'll ask all three of you, who do you prefer, P. Ryan or Booker? We'll say half PPR.
I would go Booker.
I think I would also go Booker. I think P. Ryan is more likely for a touchdown, but I think Booker is going to get enough catches to equal a touchdown, basically. So,
if you're going PPR, then I would take Booker over P. Ryan. But if it's not PPR, I'm taking P. Ryan over Booker because of the exact reason he's more likely to score a touchdown.
Yeah. Either way, if you're really stuck counting on either one of these guys, good luck. But we obviously want to do justice to these guys that are, being picked up at a high volume. So hopefully you're in a better situation than having to plug and play them. Let's talk about Kenny Stills, wide receiver of the Miami Dolphins. We've kind of been looking for this second wide receiver option all season long in fantasy and trying to peg it. And it looked for a while like Devontae Parker was going to be that guy. In flashes, it's looked like Kenny Stills. Jarvis Landry has really kind of gotten his all season long. He's been scoring touchdowns. But now with Matt Moore added to the equation, it kind of adds an interesting wrinkle here for Stills. The last 4 touchdowns that Matt Moore has thrown have all gone to Kenny Stills. So it looks like if Cutler's going to miss time for a concussion here, that Matt Moore is going to be the starter. So does that add value at this point to Kenny Stills?
I think absolutely. Like Kenny Stills' last 4 games or last 5 games with Matt Moore. This week he had 7 for 180 and 1. That's probably not going to keep being repeated. But he also, the game before that, he had a 52-yard reception for a touchdown. Game before that, 3 for 35 for a score. Game before that, 4 for 41 for a score. Game before that, he didn't score, but he had 5 for 82. So I think with Moore, he seems to love him. I don't know what that connection is there, but yeah, if Moore stays in, plus I think Moore is a better quarterback. So,
you know what, I've always felt this way. Like, and I'm glad that the way you said that, like, you don't know why they have a connection. I feel like sometimes when you have like a third string quarterback come in, or even a backup quarterback come in, he has a lot of reps all season long with not the 1s, but the 2s. Right. So if you have Jarvis and Devontae Parker as the 1-2, maybe it's because Matt Moore has more practice with the number 2s and the number 3 receivers, and that's why he has more of a connection with the Kenny Stills of the world. Like, I think that's a great example of why Kenny Stills is a buy if Matt Moore is going to be their quarterback, because you can, especially in like a daily fantasy option where he's going to cost you like $4,900. Like, you'd be silly not to take a stab at that.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of Kenny Stills. Like, I think, you guys can attest to this. I actually wanted the Eagles to sign him this past offseason. I kind of like the skill set that he can bring to an offense. So, it didn't work out that they needed to, but he's kind of been rejuvenated here in Miami. So I like him. I think that he is a consistent option coming down the stretch here to continue to score. And I'm not so sure that, Cutler might not miss a week or two from the way that things are sounding right now. So, if you're in a spot where you need a flex option, a wide receiver option, he can kind of sneak you a decent amount of points if you're in a pinch, in my opinion. All right, one more wide receiver to discuss here, and that's Josh Doxson of the Washington Redskins. Terrell Pryor is now down for the year after getting season-ending surgery, and in theory, Doxson should benefit the most as he is going to have the most skill set to play that outside receiver for the Redskins there. He's got 19 targets over his past 3 games. It's been kind of slow for he and Cousins to click, but he hasn't stopped going to him. So is Josh Doxson a guy who has any kind of fantasy appeal to you guys at this point?
I love Josh Doxson. That's the one. I haven't been overly interested in the 3 that we've listed so far, though I do like Stills a little bit for the reasons we talked about. But Doxson, for me, I mean, he's drafted in the first round for a reason. Guy's got great ball skills. He's starting to get his NFL confidence under him a little bit. I'm not going to overrate the 19 targets in 3 games. I mean, that's nice, but it's not crazy. A lot of players probably have that, but I just think the more he builds trust with Cousins, I said it with the P. Ryan thing. Washington's a passing offense. He's going to become the number 1 receiver there before long. You can't trust Jordan Reed to be on the field, obviously. So I think he's one of those players that you're going to throw him as your wide receiver 3 in the playoffs, and he's going to win people playoff games. So I like Doxson. Of all these guys, he's the one I'm in on.
Yeah, I like him too. Just that Kirk Cousins has made a lot worse than Josh Doxson look good at this point. So, as he gets more reps with him, that relationship will grow, and then that's all the more reason. Especially like you get into like a week 16 scenario, and you got an injury or something, and now that's going to be a huge bonus for your roster.
It just feels like the Redskins drafted him where they did for a reason. Like, I know they do a lot of boneheaded things, but like the talent is clearly there, at least on paper. So, I think that it's taken a lot longer than people hoped for that to really kind of come to light. But I do think that you hit the nail on the head that within time, he is going to be their clear number 1. All right, let's talk about some random stories here. We're going to mix a little fantasy football into this. Some of the bigger stories around the league that might have some fantasy impact as well. And we'll try to move through these at a little bit quicker pace, but we want to cover off on as much as we can here because there's some important stuff in here. So one of the things that I thought was interesting to start out with this week is if you're a fantasy owner and you're kind of in desperation mode right now, maybe you have to win out to get into the playoffs, or you're buried behind some teams or whatever, and you might have to take some chances. Would you be more inclined to take some more chances with your roster, or try and play it safe and be a little bit less risky at this point? Like, just as an example, and these are just 2 random names that I kind of pulled out earlier when I was thinking about this. With Case Keenum kind of having a hot hand right now, not a lot of people in theory would think about playing him over a guy like Drew Brees, who's got that reputation. So if you're on the bubble, are you making one of those tough decisions and playing a Case Keenum over a Drew Brees? Just trying to take the temperature of the room here and put out some advice for people who may be on the outside looking in.
As the resident guy who makes boneheaded decisions, see, here's the thing. Like, if you do it and it pays off, you're the smartest dude in the room. But you're also like, the reward is not big enough for the risk, because you do not want to be the guy. And maybe just going off of your example, South, like you three would never let me live it down if I bench Case Keenum for Drew Brees and I lost. Like, you'd be like, what were you thinking? You know what I mean? Like,
same reason I didn't start P. Ryan over Leo.
Exactly. Like, and for the amount of times that it pays off, it looks really bad and works out terribly. You know what I mean? So I'm going to say, in a position that I'm in, okay, and I'm going to use our league as an example and not to rub it in, but like, I'm going to play it extremely safe and make it into the playoffs, even though, like, just because, like, the alternative of not making it in and getting hammered by you guys again for yet another year is not worth it to me than for me to risk it and try and make a quick move here or there. Like, and I say that as a guy who's obviously in a good position for the playoffs right now, but also, like, taking chances is fine if it pays off, but you don't want to be the guy to take ridiculous chances and have it not pay off.
I gotta say, for those that aren't watching, Rocco just gave us like his little quick move.
It wasn't that quick.
I saw it in real time and I enjoyed it. And then because I'm also watching the stream and fielding questions, I saw it on tape delay again in the reverse angle, and I really enjoyed it. Those were some, shifty moves. Your Madden rating is going up as we speak.
It's already the highest in the group, so
that's a sore subject.
Oh my god!
I know it is. That's why I brought it up.
Don't start that conversation again, please.
All right. Anybody else? How are you looking at it? If you're on the outside looking in, are you willing to take more chances at this point in the season?
I got another question. What do you think is higher? The percent chance of Rocco getting into the playoffs, or how quick his moves are? What's a better chance there? What's better?
Probably his moves, even though it's not a great percentage.
What moves did I give you?
You said you're not usually one to make those quick moves, and we're disagreeing with you.
And then you played it out. You gave a little
shimmy shake.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. I got to be honest, but
yeah, I think if you actually are in a bad situation, in Rocco's situation where he's going into the playoffs, even though I have 200 more points than him and I'm in 4th place, if he's limping into the playoffs, I would just keep limping. But if I'm in a bad situation, like I'm down in 7th, 8th place, then I'm probably going to side with the higher ceiling. I'm going to try to score as many points as I can, because apparently what I was doing all season wasn't working. That's why I'm in 7th or 8th place. So I'm going to try to get my ceiling guys in there and at least try to make something happen.
I got to say, I think I still kind of stay the course at this point, because I feel like you're more likely that somebody else ahead of you, especially if it's close. Now, like if you have to win out and you have to get like a boatload of points, it's a little bit of a different story, and I might consider something crazy. But the reason I stay the course is because inevitably somebody above you is going to stumble down the stretch. It always happens. Like you could be one of those teams that has a dominant record all the way, and then you start to crumble right down at the end. It always seems to happen every single year in fantasy. So I think I would just stay the course at this point. And I don't know, maybe it keeps me out, but also I feel like the risk is probably not getting you in either. So
I just think it's like I just think it's like real football. We hammer guys all the time when they try and get cute. You know what I mean? Like, just do what you've been doing and just let it pan out.
If you're in 7th or 8th place, if you keep doing what you're doing, you stay in 7th or 8th place.
Yeah, I mean, and if you pull off moves and they don't pay out, then you're in last place and you look like an idiot.
Well,
so
you look like you were trying to make something happen. I'd rather that.
All right, well, sticking with this fantasy vein, I'm going to skip down to this last one here because I think this is a good question. How do you like to construct a playoff roster personally? Are you a person, an owner who, likes to look at handcuffing at this point in the season some of your, more important players or your heavy volume players? Do you stream or don't stream at this point? I know at this point, a lot of people will, after buys, start cutting some of their bench players that are just not going to make it into their lineup and just stockpile defenses or tight ends to kind of stream based on the matchup. Do you prefer to take players cut somebody maybe who you're not necessarily going to play and pick up a player who's going to have to play through week 17 and produce to try and get into the actual playoffs? What are some of these things that you typically would do with a roster?
I'm almost always streaming, like, defense. Not so much kicker anymore. I've kind of become one of the first teams to draft a kicker just because I get sick of guessing. But defensively, I think you can stream. I kind of always do that. I'm never a fan of the handcuff. Even now, I mean, my answer to this question honestly would have been a week or two ago, where if I'm in good shape, which unfortunately has not been my experience this year in most of my leagues, but if I'm a playoff favorite and almost a playoff lock like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I'm trying to trade 2 for 1 all the time.
Yeah, me too.
All the time. Like if I can get Melvin Gordon from you for names are escaping me right now, but for 2, running back 19 and 20, if I can turn those into running back 5, find a team who's on the playoff bubble, that'll happen more often than not. Hey, listen, man, you're starting. Yeah, you got Melvin Gordon, but you're trotting, Devontae Booker out there every week. I can offer you 2 serviceable players. You got to give me Gordon, and that works because I'm like, hey, listen, you stick with what you got. You're 4-6 right now. You're 3-5. You need to make this move, and people bite on that. It works for me year in and year out. Like I said, it hasn't really worked for me this year because I'm the desperate guy. But when I'm in, that's how I construct. So that way, I'm entering the roster. I genuinely, like you said earlier, I could just cut my 4 bench players. I don't care because I've got studs everywhere else.
Right. The funny story with that, last week or 2 weeks ago, right before the trade deadline, in my other league, I tried to trade a guy, Christian McCaffrey and Demaryius Thomas. His team's struggling. He's in last place by a lot. But I tried to trade him McCaffrey and Demaryius Thomas for Bell, and he lost that week. He didn't take the trade. He lost. And if he would have taken my trade, he would have won that week and possibly would have kept him alive. But,
Yeah, and I'm not going to say that that's not a good strategy. I'm not saying I'm trying to rob a guy. You know what I mean? Like,
sure, sometimes you need that.
It can often work. Like, you can't feel good about putting Devontae Booker out there. We've got a guy in our 2 quarterback league who's starting Blake Bortles every week. Like, every week. So you can't tell me he wouldn't have taken 2 mid-tier quarterbacks instead of a stud and a dud. You know what I mean? Right. So it works for both parties most of the time, that kind of trade.
Yeah, I like that idea, as well. And one of the reasons why I kind of brought this up is like one of the highest added players, like it's not, necessarily near the top, but Malcolm Brown is being added at like a ridiculous pace. In case you don't know, a lot of people really don't know, he's Todd Gurley's backup. So people are starting to handcuff, coming down the stretch here. The thing about handcuffs is that we kind of assume that they're just going to get the same volume. And then even on top of that, give a similar output if our stud player goes down. If Todd Gurley goes down, I don't care how much volume you give Malcolm Brown. He's not giving you anywhere near enough output to make it even remotely worth having him on your roster instead of having, another option as a defense play this week. Like Cincinnati's probably not on a ton of people's radars like season long, but this week they're going to play the Browns. So if you have the roster space where you have a team like that on your roster, you can stream and do better at that position instead of worrying about, did I get Austin Eckler on my roster, for down the stretch, It just seems silly to me. So I'm in agreement there.
I don't know how to construct a playoff roster because I'm never there.
I was going to say, actually, you've been kind of quiet on this.
Yeah. No, like I'm kind of in the mode of like, I'm trying to get my best 7 guys, best 8 guys that I can. And then I don't care if I'm streaming the rest of my bench all week, trying to find a good matchup and then, just playing it out and seeing how, obviously at this point, if you're going to make the playoffs, you kind of have a set team. Like I just find it very hard to believe that you've been streaming you're streaming 2 running backs for the last 6 weeks and you're confident going into the playoffs.
Right. Or you made the playoffs.
or you even made the playoffs. Or if you did make the playoffs, and you're still doing that, then you're obviously a lower seed. You haven't been streaming players at the running back position for weeks getting into the playoffs as the number 1 seed or the 2 seed. You know what I mean? So like, if
You might
you're
have this
in,
year, you might have this year.
there's too many invariables this year. I understand that, but like, I'm just kind of like, I'm not like going with the hot hand. Like, I'm looking at my lineup. I'm saying, what's the best 7 guys I can start, and then from there, if I'm adding guys or dropping guys, trying to take a chance on my bench where maybe they might play, fine. But I'm not looking for anything other than what's been in my lineup for the last 7 weeks. It's just maybe this goes back to me not wanting to take too many chances and blowing it, with silly moves. But like, if you're going into the playoffs, you're going into the playoffs with the roster that got you there.
What kind of silly moves? Let me see those silly moves again. I like it.
Man, if you're not watching, you're missing the whole show now, basically. All right, let's hit one more question here in this, and this one's an interesting one because I think we feel like in the NFC it's going to be very hard to get in with the way that some teams are playing right now. In the AFC, things are kind of wide open. So what I'm looking for is either conference here. Give me a team who's kind of on the fringe or on the outside in looking in right now to the playoffs, who you think could be really dangerous if they get into the playoffs.
You're not gonna like my answer. It's Dallas. I think the Cowboys can be super scary if they get in because you're gonna have Zeke coming off of 6 weeks rest, so totally fresh legs, angry that just happened. You'll have Tyron Smith back, you'll have Sean Lee back. They'll be a healthy team, and they're definitely a good team.
Well, you have Sean Lee till he gets hurt again.
Well, right, but in theory, you've got Sean Lee, but I feel like you don't need that team with their best player fresh and angry coming into the playoffs. I mean, it'll hurt them that there's no shot. Like, there are teams that right now are on the bubble that could still win their division. So, like, Dallas is on the road all the way, no matter what happens here. Whereas you can get a team like, I don't know, the Chargers, who could still win the West. You know what I mean? So they might be home. But I just feel like Dallas, if they get in, they've got a lot of shutting people up to do. And I as an Eagle fan, hope they don't get that chance. But I'm a little nervous of what could happen if they do get in.
2 teams I like that are currently on the outside looking in: Atlanta, just because they've been there before. That's that Super Bowl hangover. I didn't think it was going to happen to them, and it seems like it did in the beginning of the season. And I'm hoping they can get over that hump because I think they're a good team. But the other team is actually the Los Angeles Chargers. We've all talked about how much we love them. They have a running game. We know that. We know Phillip Rivers can throw it around. The defense is getting better. I mean, don't expect what they did to the Bills last week every week, but they are getting better. And they're, Kansas City's been choking up a little bit. The Raiders are what they are, but San Diego could, turn this around and come out of that with a division win and then, have a home game possibly, by all means. I call them San Diego again. I'm sorry, Los Angeles.
No, I'm laughing more because you said home game when the 27,000 seat stadium is going to be 20,000 Ravens fans, and
they'll be begging people to come, give out free playoff tickets.
I'm just saying, it's a home game. They don't have to travel, all that kind of stuff.
AFC Championship, they don't sell it out. I'm going to side with the Seahawks still. Say they do just win out or win a couple of these next games and end up playing some home games. You don't want to play there still, especially in the playoffs. It's going to be a nightmare. And if they do somehow figure out this running game, I don't think they're going to. It's a disaster right now. And they did pretty much all the running backs suck. But if they kind of string it together and block for another quarter of a second for Russell Wilson, poor dude back there, just getting lit up. I know their defense is banged up. I know they can't block, but it's still a scary team when Russell Wilson's there. So,
find me a player you're absolutely more scared of right now in the entire league.
Yeah,
I mean, there's guys like Wentz and Brady and stuff who are playing great, but
they're doing it with a lot more.
I think I saw something that he's like 84% of that team's offense.
It's crazy.
Like, that's insane. That's insane numbers. He's the leading rusher by a good bit. Their leading passer. So while, you're right, the defense doesn't strike the fear of God into you. you better be ready to score 40 because you might have to.
Yeah,
which is crazy because the 10 guys he's playing with are terrible.
It's ridiculous.
Well, all right, Jimmy Graham and Doug Baldwin are good, but the rest of them, man, keep them.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah, I'm going to make a very
Don't say the Ravens.
I'm going to say the Ravens.
Don't say the Ravens.
Listen, they're 5-5.
Don't say the Ravens.
They're 5-5, which isn't great right now. Their offense has a lot. They leave a lot to be desired out there, but everybody loves the Jaguars defense. And the Ravens are like right there behind the Jaguars defense in terms of what they're doing right now. It's just nobody's talking about them because they're an ugly, ugly football team. But that's the kind of team that gets into the playoffs and gives people trouble. You know, that just dominant defense. They've got 4 shutouts this year. And if you look at their schedule coming up the rest of the way, they've got Pittsburgh again one time. But beyond that, like we're talking Browns, Bengals, the Colts, the Texans on Monday night with, you know, not quite the same Texans team. They've got the Lions coming up. So, I mean, there's some fringe games there, but they can go either way. And I just feel like in the AFC with that last wild card spot, is anybody going to be shocked if an 8-8 team is playing as that last wild card spot?
No.
Because I mean, other than the division leaders, like nobody is a lock to win more than 8 games at this point. So I wouldn't be surprised. And I just feel like they can give the right team in the first round a fit. I'm not saying they're going to go in and win a whole bunch of playoff games, but that's a really good defense that nobody's talking about. So I think they could do some damage.
I hate that answer. They have 3 shutouts, not 4. I just want to correct you. They're 3 shutouts, such terrible teams, and they're 2-5 when they give up points in a football game. They're 2-5. Like they're not good. Any points
literally any point.
Any point. If they give up 1 point to 100 points, they're 2-5. So like they shut out the Bengals in week 1, the Dolphins after they had a fire sale, and the Packers without Aaron Rodgers. Like stop with that.
I mean,
you got me so heated right now, and it's not just because you're wearing that ugly Michigan sweatshirt.
So what if they give up 6 points?
2-5.
2-5.
What if it's 9?
2-5.
But here's the question that you have to answer on that. That's the variable to that. Is Joe Flacco elite?
Still not.
What if they give up 12 points?
Right. Get us back on the rails, please.
It's time to move on. Listen, let's take a second here and get back on the rails. You know, we've got all this nonsense going on, but
that team lost to the Bears. I just want to throw that out there.
All right, you're going on mute. Listen, in life, we've only got 2 choices. All right, you could either get hungry or you can be hungry. And our friends over at Gorb told us all about that, and just an incredible speech that has gone viral. It kind of swept the internet all of a sudden. I probably watched it like 15 times at this point. It's a social media movement going on right now with the hashtag Gorb. That's GHORBH. And you see all these awesome, people out there that are wearing this gear to give them that reminder constantly that in life, you've only got 2 choices: to get hungry or to be hungry. You can find out all about the mission of it at GHORBH.com. While you're there, you could buy some awesome gear, from sweatshirts to t-shirts to accessories, everything in between, for men, women, kids. They might even branch out at this point and have something for your pets. They've got everything at Gorb. So you've got to go and check it out. It's completely incredibly comfortable. It looks good when you wear it. If it makes me look good and feel comfortable, it's doing something miraculous. So you've got to check it out for yourselves. GHORBH.com. Get hungry or be hungry. All right, guys, let's get back on track with some fantasy football talk here and talk about our goons and ghosts for week 12. Obviously, we're going to start off with the goons here. And these are guys that we believe are going to outperform a little bit of a lower ranking. So we feel like at this point, they may be somewhere down the line, but they're going to give you similar production to guys at the top. So let's start it off right out of the gates here this week. Deal, tell us, who is your goon for Week 12?
My goon is Samad JP Ryan, and we
Wow.
talked about him a little bit. Yep, I like him. I think he's a good running back. And let me talk a little bit more about him. He's actually in that Jamal Williams category for me. He's a guy that I've been talking about since the draft, saying that I thought he was going to be a really good running back if he got a chance. And last week he got a chance, and he was really good. And maybe more importantly than how he looked last week, the Redskins don't really have another option, like we talked about. If you scroll through their injury list, you can read for half an hour and not see all the names. It's ridiculous. Their IR list is longer than their roster. There should be a limit on that. Like it should be like a 55-man IR list. That should be a thing now. And the only other running back they have is Byron Marshall, who had 1 rush for 2 yards last week, and he was signed from a practice squad. They might bring somebody else up from the practice squad. This week he goes up against a struggling Giants team. It's given up the 15th most points to running backs, and I believe he can shred them. And he has the confidence coming off 126 yards and a score, and similarly ranked Saints defense he faced last week. This week I really like him to settle in, kind of play his own game. He knows he's the lead dog now. I like him for 118 total yards, which is a little bit down from last week, but I like him to have 2 scores this week.
All right, Miles, who do you got for us for a goon?
Yeah, I'm going to keep you guys on Thanksgiving at running back with Alfred Morris from the Cowboys. Becoming a little bit of a Cowboys fanboy here on this podcast. I'm not enjoying that, but Alfred is pre-ranked running back 22 right now in half PPR. And, he's coming out this week staking definite claim to the Cowboys backfield over the past 2 weeks, especially this past Sunday night against the Eagles. Ended up with 91 yards against Philly, which is more than double what any player outside of Kareem Hunt has done against that team, which is kind of crazy. So despite, a really poor game script, too, for the Cowboys, they committed to the run. He got 17 carries in a game where a lot of coaches would have gone pass happy like crazy. This week, he gets a far more fantasy-friendly matchup at home against the Chargers. Sharp contrast to the very stingy Eagles, the Chargers have given up 100 yards to 4 different running backs this season and 6 touchdowns to equate to the 4th most points given up to running backs, despite easy rushing defense matchups with Denver twice, the Giants, the Patriots, and they face the Jags without Leonard Fournette. So despite not playing Murderer's Row here, they're giving it up big time on the ground. Seems just like a perfect storm to me. The Cowboys recommitting themselves to the run. Chargers struggling against good rushing teams, and make no mistake, the Cowboys are still a good rushing team. Early word is that Tyron Smith will be back. I like Morris to hit 110 yards and score a touchdown on the ground, delivering an easy top 12 finish for you at running back this week.
All right, Rocco, who do you got for us?
I just realized that all 3 of us have gone with some Thanksgiving goons.
Nice.
Hopefully, if you guys are playing daily fantasy, that'll work well for you. But my goon this week is Latavius Murray, coming in at running back number 21. Listen, the Vikings are on fire. They're the number 2 seed in the NFC right now at 8-2, and only 1 game back of the Philadelphia Eagles.
9-1.
They are riding the hot hands of Case Keenum, Latavius Murray, and Adam Thielen. Raise your hand if you thought that that was going to be their big triplets at the beginning of the season. I'm going to put my hand down because I'm a liar. Okay? Nobody thought that. But I digress. Let's get back. This is where we are. This is the world we live in. Case Keenum, Latavius Murray, and Adam Thielen are leading the Minnesota Vikings offense. All right? Murray has been doing the same thing for the Vikings that basically got him ran out of Oakland. Being productive. Okay? He's not rushing for a ton of yards, but he's finding the end zone. He's got double-digit points in 3 of the last 4 weeks. Over those 4 weeks, he's averaging 17 carries, 75 yards, and a touchdown. Add that in to this week being a divisional game against the hated Lions, being on Thanksgiving in prime time, and probably going to be a little bit of a slobber knocker. Yeah, I said it, slobber knocker. I like him to have almost identical numbers to those in a really competitive, low-scoring NFC North matchup. Okay, I give Lat Murray 18 carries for 90 yards and a score. I think that's way higher than his pre-ranked 21. So he's my goon of the week.
All right. Well, when you guys zig, I tend to zag. And a lot of times I fall flat on my face with it, but I'm okay with it. I'm not going with a Thanksgiving player here. I'm going with Devontae Booker of the Broncos as my goon this week. He is running back number 41 right now, which is absolutely absurd considering that his production has been going up and up every single week. Booker's emerging as their lead back at this point. It's happening now. Right? We talked about it from the beginning of last year that eventually this guy was going to be the guy. And I think that it's starting to happen at this point. He needs to kind of cement this spot while he's got the chance here. Yes, CJ Anderson is still active, but they just really have not gotten anything going with CJ Anderson in the running game. Even with Booker, if he splits the actual physical rushing carries, he's still clearly the bigger receiving threat, which sets him apart right now in that backfield. The Raiders have surrendered the most receiving touchdowns to opposing running backs this year. I bet you didn't know that until right now. Well, now you do. He's caught 5 for 54 last week and an additional 14 carries, which was the most of the year for him to this point. So some of the players who have caught a touchdown this year against the Raiders, Dion Lewis, Damian Williams. I think Devontae Booker is more talented of a back than those two guys who have gotten in the end zone as a receiving threat type back. So I think he's in for a decent sized day here as far as total yardage goes. I got him 16 carries for 60 yards and another 6 catches for 71 and a touchdown. I think he's going off in the receiving game this week, which is going to set him apart much higher than running back 41 this week, Devontae Booker.
Now, can I start him at wide receiver instead of Julio Jones?
I mean, he is more likely to score a touchdown.
The 6 for 71 is pretty accurate.
But the touchdown will set him apart. All right, let's talk about our ghosts. On that note, obviously our ghosts are guys who are ranked pretty high heading into week 12, who we just don't believe are going to live up to those expectations. Could be for a variety of reasons, and of course, we're going to give those reasons to you now. So, Miles, why don't you get us started with your ghost?
Yeah, transition time. My ghost, probably for the rest of the season, is Julio Jones, wide receiver from the Atlanta Falcons, pre-ranked ridiculously at wide receiver 3 overall, not 3 on your team where he probably should be. I don't think it's possible for a guy to go from someone's favorite player in the league to least favorite player in the league as quickly as this guy has. But I'm going to keep this pretty short and sweet. The dude does not score. He never really has, but at least he used to put up crazy reception and yard numbers. He only has 3 weeks in double digits this year in standard leagues, and he's wide receiver 23 through 10 weeks. Not because he's hurt, because he's bad. He has a juicy matchup this week against the Bucs, and it doesn't matter. I don't care. It doesn't matter who you play, Julio, because you're running all these tag routes for nothing. They don't throw you the ball anymore. Sarkisian's allergic to you. Matt Ryan is not interested in another Super Bowl run. And even when they do throw it to you, you drop it. I'm done. Julio is going for 5 catches for 70 yards because that's what he does. He should be a wide receiver 3 on your team. Not quite wide receiver 3 overall. When he's not even 1 on his own team.
Is he 3 on his own team?
He's 2.
Okay.
He's 2-ish. But he's 2 on a team that's throwing for like 180 yards a game. So, listen, here's the deal. I put him as my ghost because I'm really hoping for the reverse jinx here because I'm tired of losing in fantasy football, Julio.
I know you're listening, Julio.
Julio Jones, ghost of the week.
Oh, my Lord.
You know Miles is heated when he turns into the Rock mid-promo.
It doesn't matter.
He did turn into the Rock there. I love it.
When I got to worry whether or not I'm being louder than Miles, I know he's heated.
All right, Rocco, give us your ghost.
My ghost of the week. No, I'm just kidding. My ghost of the week is Jordan Howard. He comes in at running back 11. Listen, don't play running backs versus the Philadelphia Eagles. It doesn't work out well for you. It hasn't worked out so far well for anybody this year. I don't see a change in this week. The Eagles are ranked 1 against the run this year. That alone would be enough of a reason to put Jordan Howard on the shelf. The Chiefs in week 2 and the Cowboys last week are the only teams to rush for over 100 yards against the Eagles this year, both of which landed at exactly 112 yards. No player this season has rushed for 100, and the Eagles, on top of that, have only given up 4 rushing touchdowns all season long. This spells terrible, terrible news for Jordan Howard owners. Don't own him in daily for whatever you do. And honestly, you might want to look at other options if you're trying to make the playoffs and you need a big running back output, because you're not going to get it from Jordan Howard this week.
You know, I got to say, I know this is kind of off schedule, but this is a perfect example, going back to what South said earlier. Like, if you're on the bubble, do you have the balls to bench Jordan Howard because this matchup is such a nightmare?
It's an interesting question. I wonder if anybody in this room has that dilemma.
Obviously, it depends what your roster looks like, but is that you?
He is currently on my bench.
Oh, that's right. And you're right. Is he really? Who are you starting ahead of him?
To be determined, because I'm playing you this week, so nobody's earned a spot yet.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, for all the listeners out there, I don't set my stars.
I hate both of you. I don't even know why.
It's really annoying.
I hate both of you.
I've gotten to Wednesdays this year. It's better.
You have. All right, listen, I'm going to give you my ghost here. I'm going along similar lines that Miles had.
So irritated.
I'm going with Mike Evans. He's currently wide receiver 8 for week 12. I don't know if the people who are ranking for this week realize this, but Ryan Fitzpatrick is the quarterback of the Tampa Bay Bucks right now. So that's not good. Not good at all. All right, Mike Evans has 5 or fewer catches in 6 of his last 7 games. The volume really just has not been there for him this year. He's not gone over 100 yards in a game at all this season. He's got no touchdowns in his last 3 games, primary times that Fitzpatrick has had to play. He's going to draw, I'm going to say this, might sound crazy, a stingy Falcons secondary who have done a decent job of limiting wide receivers this season. They're definitely coming on a lot stronger than they have been, especially at the start of the season. This is kind of what they did last year as well, where, you know, they kind of picked up the pace and got stingy and hot at the right time. I feel like they're heading into that full stride at this point. They've given up just 1 touchdown to a wide receiver in their past 4 games. So this is not adding up well for Mike Evans. Ryan Fitzpatrick is still starting for Jameis Winston this week. They just really have not had a connection. And even to this point, Jameis really didn't have that connection with them. They've just connected on 24% of the targets to Mike Evans since he's been starting. The numbers are not in Mike Evans' favor. I don't think the matchup is going to be in his favor. The quarterback is not in his favor. I'm going 5 catches for 61 yards for Mike Evans. No scores. A very quiet game for him. He is my ghost this week. Deal, who's your ghost?
My ghost this week is Carlos Hyde, running back number 9. Now, Carlos has been a conundrum this season. It's been a weird year for Carlos, and we thought he was going to have a great year in the Kyle Shanahan system, and then Kyle Shanahan didn't have any interest in him and drafted and signed about 3 dozen other running backs because he didn't fit the system. Then a bunch got hurt or sucked, and Shanahan seemed to be all in again because he kind of had to be. So then we sheepishly bought back in. Then he had a solid week 1 against Carolina and shredded Seattle week 2, followed by 2 touchdown day against the Rams. And every owner's eyes and lit up and their mouths watered when they saw that he was playing the Colts week 5. Then he rushed for 11 yards against the Colts. 11. No, he's been pretty average for the most part after that. In their last week before the bye, he played 46 snaps, and the lethal tandem of Kyle Juicy Fruit and Matt Breida combined for 55 snaps, outsnapped him by 9 snaps. And I don't know what's going on in San Fran, but crazier and scarier, I don't think Shanahan does either. It's really a disaster still. And all that to say, Hyde shredded Seattle in week 2. But they've bounced back since then. In their last 5 weeks after their bye, after Seattle's bye, they've allowed only 2.5 yards per carry. That's great for them. but bad news for running backs. They're giving up a fair amount of touchdowns, but sadly for Hyde, it's not a big part of his game. He's only scored touchdowns in 2 games this season. I don't see any way Hyde's running back number 9. I see him in the later teens, stat line of 92 yards, which isn't terrible, but no way he scores this week.
All right, let's talk about some daily fantasy football. Obviously, lots of games to pick through this week. We're going to, I think, try and stick toward that Sunday slate just to kind of give some of our listeners a grace period if you don't get to listen to this before the Thanksgiving holiday and you miss out on those games. So, look, the objective here is simple. We want to pick a player who's going to cost significantly less than some of these top guys and give you a significant return for that little bit that you're going to spend for them. Finding the value in a little bit of a deeper player so you have more cash available for elsewhere in your lineup. Rocco, why don't you get us started here?
I'd like to think that we do a lot of research on this stuff. And I mean, I know I do, and I know you guys do too. But every once in a while, I like to throw a gut feeling in there. And this week, my gut feeling is Mohamed Sanu at $5,800. Listen, Sanu is scoring all the touchdowns that Julio Jones is not. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying I agree with it, but whether you like it or not, it's happening. Okay? Add this to the fact that they get the porous Tampa Bay defense, which is 26th against the pass. The fact that if they want to make the playoffs, they really need to start putting the ball in the end zone. I expect Matt Ryan to air it out some, not a lot, this week. But I like Mohamed Sanu to be the beneficiary of all of that because we already know that Julio Jones isn't catching touchdowns. I like Mohamed Sanu to pick up all the points that Julio Jones is not going to get you this week. So Miles goes to Julio, and I'm telling you to save money at $1,500 by picking up the guy who's going to score the points that he's not, Mohamed Sanu. Go with a fair stat line. 5 catches, 85 yards, and a score.
Miles, do you think that Julio will score?
I have my doubts.
I think it's appropriate here, as I'm going to give you my daily value, that the 2 guys with the biggest guts are going with their gut this week on Thanksgiving. All right. My daily value is Derrick Henry of the Tennessee Titans for $5,500. He went 19 carries for 131 yards and a touchdown in his first game against the Colts earlier this year. The Colts have been middle of the pack against running backs this year, but they've kind of been hurt by some of these bigger backs, these more powerful downhill runners. Not that, Henry exclusively fits into that because he's deceptively good in every element. So, but Henry, Fournette, Gurley, these guys who are just, really good between the tackles and pounders, they've really all hurt them this year. This is a gut feeling and a matchup thing more than anything for me. But I've kind of been on a little bit of a roll here, so I'm going with it. His yards per carry have been increasing. His production in the offense has been increasing. Whereas, maybe not the touches are going up, but what he's doing with his touches is getting significantly better each and every game. It's only a matter of time, and I know we talk about this all the time, before he's the lead dog there for the Titans. And I think that we're starting to see, now that he's making the most of every opportunity with the ball, that's going to be coming fairly soon. I've got Derrick Henry, 17 carries, 95 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns this week against the Colts. He's my daily value this week. Deal, who do you got for us?
I gotta tell you, I don't love it. I don't love it, Sal.
I mean, I didn't say they win. I just gave you the numbers.
They're gonna win. Shut up. My daily value this week is D.D. Westbrook, $4,900. Now, D.D., he just returned last week, and the Jags haven't been great on offense. So why would I pick him? Well, because I remember back to the preseason where in just 2 games, he had 12 receptions for 246 yards and a score, which is ridiculous. And D.D. is a really good receiver. He's the receiver that the Jags need. This week, he's the 60th most expensive receiver. He's going up against the Cardinals, who sound intimidating, but this season they're giving up the 7th most points to receivers. I love Dede this week for a great game. I don't expect him to have a 150-yard game. I don't expect him to touch those 246-yard numbers, but I do expect him to have the second 100-yard week for the Jags receiver core this year, which is crazy. They've only had one, but I like him for 9 receptions, 112 yards, and a score.
You said that the Cardinals sound intimidating. What about a Cardinal sounds intimidating? Like, it's not as intimidating as like a lion or a bear, right?
What else do you think is a scary one?
All right, my daily play of the week. This goes literally any further. Is Jacoby Brissett, quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts.
That's not scary.
I'm picking you up there, deal. I know it's South went with the Titan. I'm going with the Colt. $6,900 here. I'm generally not much for paying down at quarterback, but I may well make an exception this week. Brissett is in a great spot at home, coming off a bye. You know, guy still only 3 months into his tenure with the Colts. Even the week off to just get his butt in the playbook is a beneficial thing for him. He's priced at quarterback 18, which that frustrated me to count to. Deal, I'm crazy impressed that you counted down to 60 for Dede Westbrook. Good
60.
job.
Thank you.
That's dedication, people.
He
QB
dropped those
18.
in a spreadsheet.
That's probably what happened, and then he just looked at what row it was in. Anyways, $1,000 cheaper.
I wish I would have thought of that.
It's $1,000 cheaper than the majority of the quarterbacks that are going to be owned in your tournaments and your cash games. Always nice to go with a low-owned player who's still going to put up points. This guy's facing a Titans defense that's given up 11th most to the quarterback. Most notably, for this case, they've been shredded by Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson. Now, Brissett, obviously not quite in their tier, but it's that scrambling quarterback that really has given the Titans fits this year. On top of that, the Titans were shredded just last week by Ben Roethlisberger for $299 and 4 touchdowns. So Brissett himself, he's been solid of late. He's got 2 touchdowns in 3 straight games, 2 touchdowns through the air. I like him to hit that again this week, as well as score 1 on the ground. And what's going to be, I think, the highest point total of the weekend in the Titans-Colts game. So whenever you have that kind of situation, you can save on a quarterback in that game. I like your chances to do that. So pick up Jacoby Brissett. I think he's going to give you amazing value for under $7,000. That'll lets you hit some of these top tiers at these other positions.
All right, well, that's it for this week's edition of the show. Hopefully you guys are going to all have a very happy Thanksgiving, spend some quality time with the people who you care about the most, your family, your friends. Hopefully you're going to have half as good of a weekend as I'm going to, because it's going to be pretty awesome. Yep. Just throwing that out there. So be sure to stay tuned to footballgoons.com for all of our updates each and every week. Every single week, Miles is updating his power rankings. You don't want to miss those. They come out Tuesday or Wednesday every single week. Good insight, good analysis on where the teams are at right now, what they kind of need to do moving forward. It's a read that I enjoy every single week. Keep up with us on social media as well. Facebook.com/footballgoons. On the Twitter, we are at footballgoons. And right here on our YouTube channel, the Football Goons channel, you can subscribe to us. You can comment on our videos. You can tell us how handsome we are. Whatever you want to do, we will get back to you on social media, because we're not that guy collectively. We enjoy talking with you guys out there in the Goon Squad. So hit us up, questions, comments, whenever you want to, and we'll get back to you. We will catch you guys next week.